Welcome back to Restless. My name is Father Joseph Gill, priest of the Diocese of Bridgeport, and you've joined Paul and Lauren as together we restlessly seek the face of Christ in the midst of today's crazy and mixed up world. And part of this crazy and mixed up world is dealing with people that annoy us. Is that not the case?
Of course.
So our episode is called Dealing with Difficult People. And when I emailed to see who was up for this episode, Paul writes back and says, well, I'm generally considered a difficult person. So
yes, I consider myself difficult. I'm most difficult on myself, though.
So you're hard on yourself?
Very hard on myself. Very high expectations.
Like perfectionism?
No, I know I'm not perfect.
So perfectionism is not the goal? Because oftentimes that is a way that people are hard on themselves.
No, I gave up on that 20 years ago.
Okay, that's good. Because for anyone that doesn't know, we shouldn't be seeking perfectionism.
Right. We should be seeking Christ.
Yeah.
And the more we become like Christ, the holier we become. But
And I would say, too, we're limited in our reason because we're like locked in the physical world, but there's a spiritual world. So you might think of like, oh, I screwed this up. And like you dwell on it. But maybe that's an opportunity for growth or a humiliation, which is helping sanctify you.
And maybe sanctify someone else, right? So
Yes.
if we have an annoying habit that gets on everyone else's nerves, maybe we're leading someone else to holiness accidentally.
Yes.
Which brings us to the question of, who do you find most difficult in your life? You don't have to name names. Unless, if it's me, tell me, please.
It's not you.
Oh, okay, that's good. That's good.
Definitely not you.
Do you have coworkers or family members?
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess I'm blessed.
I
don't
would
have any...
say that I don't know if there's a couple of people I could think of, but that are, I'd say it's more circumstantial when I find people difficult.
Really?
I don't.
It's not like a
there's
difficult person. It's just the person at times will.
Yeah,
be difficult
there's
to you.
certain qualities that will, like pet peeves that will set me off.
So what are some of your pet peeves?
Laziness.
Okay.
One.
Yeah.
Lack of urgency when necessary.
For me, not responding to email within like 48 hours is a huge pet peeve.
Well, that's straight
Or
up
texting.
rude.
Please tell my family that.
There's a certain courtesy.
Sorry, did I just throw
of
them on the bus? Yes.
communication. I get annoyed with that too, and I have this sense of like, okay, I mean, a lot of us work outside of the church. The three of us here. I mean, outside of work for the church, we do a lot of things. So there's emails to keep everybody, moving along about what we're trying to accomplish, which is generally good.
Right, for the salvation of souls.
For these people that I know that all have jobs, it's like I'm going to assume that you respond to your work emails within a certain amount of time because you have to do that. But why are you not responding to this email that's outside of work? Like the same cordial rules apply.
But there's a lot of email fatigue. So not at I'm not fully ramped up at my current job. I've been there just over 3 months. But my last job, I was getting like 150 to 250 emails a day.
Whoa.
So like to even consider responding to a personal email after dealing with one of those days. And that was like daily. And like when it's upwards of 300 emails a day, like when I have to deal with personal email, I'm just not doing it. I'm not looking at it. I don't think about it. I'll respond to a text message, but email, it's like
that's good to know. Okay, so I'll
traumatic.
It's funny you say that because you're like one of the most responsive people.
I'm very responsive, and that's funny. I wasn't. If you notice back in like the spring, I was very unresponsive.
And everybody has different jobs, different demands. Like I get that, but I've just sensed a general lack of. I don't just think it's. I don't know, a lack of cordiality. Is that a word? Like responding when you know you should.
And everybody has different pet peeves. Like it doesn't bother some people. So what are some other pet peeves? Like Lauren, what are your...
We've ramped up one of mine. Well, I'm often like, I'm planning things, whether it's youth group or something at St. Cecilia's or like a young adult party.
Right?
And it's like, I'm giving my time for all of you people.
I know.
I just need a little bit of help, a little bit of responsiveness.
Yeah. I think it's, so I get it when people do commit to something and then they don't follow through. That's a big. So if I'm doing something and then I don't have anyone that actually said I'm going to help you with this, then I'm not as bothered. I might still get a little bothered, but I'm not as bothered. But let's say you actually have a team of people that are meant to do something, and there's people that's like, can we please meet next Sunday at 2 p.m. by Zoom to discuss this very important thing? And then it's just crickets.
Yes.
For like a week. Oh my gosh, I want to scream. And then I'll like scold people. I'll be like, please respond. It is very rude not to respond to text messages like this. I know you saw it because I can tell on WhatsApp that you read it. So please respond.
Found out.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, you can track this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's, I think too, there's a bit of letting go. Like I will try to reach people other ways.
Yeah.
You know, or I try different things, or like I know this is an unresponsive person, so don't rely on them. You know, try to work around things and not let them get to you. I would say there are personality types that I definitely find difficult, and there's a lot of them. So like people who are like always downers, like everything's a no or the most negative. And it just kind of gets exhausting if you're talking, and it's like, okay, not everything is that bad, but you know. In those situations, it's probably not worth it to try to convince them. It's like you just...
Yeah.
I usually have my breaking point, though, I will say. It's like, take it, and then, you know, kind of engage. Or...
If I may say honestly, you're very
Yes.
funny when you get frustrated. Not angry, frustrated.
I guess that's good. I would not say that most people say that.
Oh, no. You
What else?
Mean.
Oh, I would...
That's mean or not?
I don't know.
No,
I'm not sure.
well,
I'm just being
I'm
honest.
glad to entertain you. I mean, I certainly get animated. I know that.
Animated, maybe that's
yeah,
the right
I
word.
get animated. Also, people that are like ruled by their anxiety. I generally don't have a lot of patience for that. I mean, I know that's bad. I don't think I'm harsh with people. You know, I try to be understanding or whatever, but it's like, oh my gosh, you're telling me you're anxious about coming to a party where you're going to have fun with your friends? It's like, this is illogical. Like,
Yeah, that's
and if
fair.
you've like reached a point of maturity, you're a grown adult, like you've done this before, like, come on, step
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone a little bit. Like we had an episode about that.
We
Courage.
did. And
Stepping
also
out of your
one
comfort
about
zone.
shyness.
Yeah, like just do it. You know,
Sure,
Or if someone's relying on you in those situations, I'm just like, come on,
Yeah.
do it.
I don't do well with people that are high drama and high maintenance.
Oh, that's another great one.
I'm a pretty chill person. Like I'm really low maintenance. Like you do your thing, I'll do my thing, and we just kind of do our own things. And so you know, and thankfully, I have to say, like you say, you guys have coworkers that challenge you. I have the best coworkers in the world. I love everybody at my parish that I work with, everybody at the school where I work with.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's great.
But there are some parishioners who, you know, are very needy. You know, and sometimes it's legitimate, and most of the time it's not. You know, it's just kind of there. They need to be whether it's recognized or, you know, they're just seeking attention or seeking validation, and so they need it from the priest or whatever. You need to meet all the time about their different issues, and you know, and at first, obviously, you want to be like Christ to them, and you want to be a listening ear. But after the same meeting where they discuss the same thing 3 times, you're kind of like, okay, now it's time for you to take the next step and act on it and try to find some solutions, because it's not just all about talking about your problem. Now you have to fix the problem, right?
And that's not uncharitable.
I would hope not. Yeah.
No, definitely not.
Because
at
if
a certain
you want
point,
to talk, get a therapist and pay $100 an hour, right? You could talk
and
to them.
if you want to change, it's up to you to change.
Right.
And
Right.
you have time and other commitments, so out of respect to you, they should understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And truthfully, if I can be totally honest on the air, that's why I don't do a whole lot of spiritual direction. I've had a lot of people ask me, and partly I don't feel called to it, and I'm also busy with a lot of other stuff. But there's a lot of people that don't really want spiritual direction. They don't want to grow spiritually. They just kind of want to talk about their life and not find any solutions to it. And maybe it's because I'm a man, and like men like to solve problems. But when a person comes to me with a problem, I'm like, okay, well, here's what you need to do to solve it. And they're like, no, I just want to talk about it. I'm like, well, that's
I
not
think
what I'm here for.
the other thing that spiritual direction does, in my experience, is it does show you your own like lesser qualities.
Yeah.
And force you to confront them. And people don't want to do that. They don't actually want to be told that they're not so great. I mean, just
Yeah.
we all succumb to this. Like, we are the center of our own lives. I think too much in a lot of cases, where it's really like, we are nothing. We are creatures created by God. God is everything. God is everything in us. That's how it's supposed to be ordered.
Amen.
Yes, we are nothing, but God makes us everything. God makes us great.
Right. Anything
But
good we have in us is because
Yes, but we have that disordered.
Right.
Generally speaking, most of us do. So we're the center of, you know, our focus all the time, and many people miss their own faults.
Yeah.
And I would say many people are not open to learning them. And that I've found is very tricky in dealing with people. As you're listening to the overdramatic person, or the super anxious person, or the really needy person that has a lot of questions, like, and I'm not trying to sound like I've got it all figured out, but I have worked on myself, I would say, quite a bit, and been in spiritual direction and had this happen to me, you know?
Oh yeah, with your spiritual director.
And be forced to face things. Yeah, like even not so long ago, I was told, well, you have a lot of pride to work on. And I was like, still? Me? Like, I know, like 3 years ago when I came in here, I thought I was like so great because of Ultimate, playing professionally, like such a high inflated sense of myself. And because I could do this silly game really well, I thought of myself as better than other people. Like I really would look at them like, how can you not do this? Like I can do it. Right? But it's like different skill sets.
Actually really hard to play Frisbee at high level.
We all have different talents and gifts.
Tried.
And
it's hard.
yes. But no, it hit me because I can see also, like through going through spiritual direction and spiritual exercises and growing in my own spiritual life, being taught like these are kind of the ways that humans get things out of balance, let's say, it becomes easy to identify them in others. Well, you learn, so you can just see them, right? So I can see qualities in other people, and then it gets knocked back on you like, oh, yeah, you still have a lot of pride to work on. I was like, damn.
And that's one thing about, when we're talking about these the difficult things we find in other people is that a lot of times we have a lot of difficult faults too. And I'm sure that I do things that really annoy other people. I try not to, but I'm sure I do. So when we deal with these challenging people in our life, because everybody's got them, what virtues do you see God forming in you with this person in your life?
Patience. It's a big one.
It's always patience for me.
Really?
Yeah, patience. Also, I don't know if empathy it's not a virtue, but it's a quality. It's a good quality, I think.
It could be considered
Or
virtue.
perhaps compassion.
Compassion.
Like I really wasn't compassionate in the beginning of this episode, right? I was explaining difficult people.
I asked the question. It's my fault.
Yeah. So I think those two would be helpful. I had my last job. There was a few people at the firm who were. There's a difference between people that are difficult to deal with because there's a personality mismatch. Like some people just don't get along well, and they're not necessarily doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
just being themselves, and like they have things to work on, but like it just doesn't work.
Sure.
And then there's some people that are like uncharitable.
Yeah,
intentionally.
That's a big difference. Yeah,
right. And so there was a few people at my last firm that were uncharitable intentionally, and that was. And there's people I know that I've worked with that I just don't get along with. I don't work with well, and they irritate me, but they're not doing anything wrong necessarily. But once I started to see this emerge of these people, and they started to get like a loud voice at the firm that were very uncharitable and not treating people the way they should treat them, that's when I was like, okay, there's a big problem here.
Yeah.
And I kind of had to get away from that a little bit.
That's fair.
I got away from it in the firm, and then I left the firm. So... yeah, so I think there's a difference there, but you grow. Well, it's important to grow, and I think it's good to grow in compassion and patience with the people that have those personalities that don't match up very well, and just traits that are not bad, they're just different, versus like calling out and correcting people that are being like rude, uncharitable, something like that.
Well, recently there's come up a term, toxic people, right?
Yeah.
And
toxic culture, that would be a big one.
Yeah, and a toxic culture and people who just are toxic. And I'd love to ask you this thought. Christ obviously tells us to love our enemies and to love all. But when it comes to toxic people, do we have to spend time with them, or should we try to purposely avoid them?
It depends on if it's affecting you. So if these toxic people are bringing you into sin, then it's probably wise to disassociate with them.
Yeah.
To some extent. I mean, it just like if you have friends that are doing bad things, don't
hang out with them. Yeah.
You could still love them. You could still do things one-on-one or do different things, but don't engage.
Yeah.
Because it bring you into sin and be like, and you're probably prideful to the pride point and being like, no, I won't do that stuff. And then all of a sudden,
yeah,
they drag you into it.
What do you mean by toxic?
I think it means different things for different relationships. Like you had mentioned people that are always downers, who have seen everything negative and complain about everything. That can be really toxic, right? Because then you find your mood being dampened. You find you anytime you have an interaction with that person, it's usually really negative.
I think that we have to accept that people in our lives are making their own free choices to live their lives in a certain way. And we cannot change everybody.
Yeah.
Not that we necessarily should, but we all have Christ and we know how great he is. I'm sure we all know people who don't, right? Like we can't force that on anybody. So, right, you just like you have to let somebody kind of be, and you can pray for them, as Paul was saying, and trusting God in their eventual conversion and salvation. I think it goes the same way with a toxic person. Like you don't have to engage someone toxic and try to continue to encourage them or, help them. Like if they are toxic, or even like, I think the devil is becoming more and more ingrained in society. Like people are doing demonic things, right? If they're choosing that, they're choosing that. We don't have to engage in that. You could tell them like, hey, that's actually really dangerous. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do the crystal thing or the goddess thing or, right? Like
that's one version of toxicity. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
the demonic.
But if that's what they're going to choose to do and you gave them their warning, then I don't think we have to continue to engage.
Yeah. Well, I love, I think Aquinas' definition of love is important to keep in mind. It's love is willing the good of the other. So it's not an emotional thing, and it doesn't mean giving them everything they want. So like, if you have that brother-in-law who's constantly mooching off of you, well, the truly loving option is actually to tell him no. And if he refuses to respect that boundary, then you excise him out of your life. And that can actually be the most loving option, even though it seems like it's not loving. There's some of this.
We're called to love, not necessarily be kind, right? Like that's not it's like when you punish a child, you're not being kind to the child in like the strict sense of the word.
Yeah,
kind.
maybe I would use the word nice. Like we don't have to always have to be nice.
Aren't they synonyms? Maybe.
I'm just I think nice means being walked over by other people. Nice is someone who never makes controversy and never, puts their foot down on anything.
Right. Well, I think
boundaries are important.
Yeah. I think going to the people that are always downers. So there's a thing called, I've talked about it before on the program, but it's the big 5 personality traits. And 2 of the big 5 is neuroticism and agreeableness. And so people that are highly neurotic, and neurotic not meaning like you're crazy, but it's negative emotion, degree of negative emotion. So people that are highly neurotic and highly disagreeable tend to be rather unpleasant people. I mean, and they're usually also not open. So if they're like, that's another trait, like openness. So if they're closed-minded, neurotic, and disagreeable.
Ooh, that's the trifecta right there.
Yeah, it's not those are probably unpleasant people, but they're still called to love, and we're still called to love them. So if you do find yourself attracted to somebody, not romantically, but like attracted to this person because you want to help them, then maybe you can find the things that make them more agreeable, like the tasks or like as a male, it's the way we think, but like the activities, the tasks, the things they want to talk about, the interests or whatever that you can do to pull out, pull out the cases where they're agreeable or they're less nervous or they're more open. And they can have enjoyable, like you can work with people too.
Well, I wonder if it does. I think what you said is interesting that you kind of like feel attracted to them in the sense of like you almost make that person your mission. Like I'm gonna really pour my energy and my love into this person in the hopes that they can encounter Christ's love through me. And
exactly.
And that's a big investment. And some people are called to do that, but probably not with everybody. Like 1 or 2 people. But
right.
I think the example.
It's also, I think, another example of pride, though. If you think you can change someone.
Oh, that's very true.
Because it's not you, it's God.
Amen. I'm reminded of the example. I don't know if you ever read The Story of a Soul by St. Therese of Lisieux, who she talks about this nun that used to just drive her nuts, and so she made it her life's mission to show extra charity to this nun. And so she'd go out of her way to include her in recreation and to say kind things about her and everything possible to make her, to try to soften her spirit. And then, of course, after she died, they're interviewing everybody in the convent about, did you know St. Therese? And this nun's like, oh, St. Therese and I were best friends. For some reason, she really loved me. She had, she's so attracted to my wonderful winning personality. And then they went and read the biography, and she's like, no, actually, I can't stand this nun. But she did such a good job of living out that mission of like, you're my ministry right here.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I think really hard to do.
St. Therese and go,
really hard.
That's why a lot of people don't. They love her. They don't like reading her stuff.
And not necessarily want to imitate her.
Right. No, it's just like, oh, she's so good or whatever.
Yeah.
What she talks about is like, well, I can't do that. I don't know.
I remember. I went to Franciscan University for college, and there were some friends who were super devoted to Restless. And one day it was like this rainy day, like 40 degrees outside, freezing, awful. And we're walking to class, and I'm like, this rain stinks. It's so miserable. And there's like, all weather is good weather if it comes from the Lord. That's what Saint Therese said. And I'm like, I want to punch you across the campus right now.
That's a great
you're like unhelpful guys.
Yeah.
It's like, there was bad weather when she had tuberculosis.
Yeah.
It was cold.
All tuberculosis is great if it comes from the Lord.
Right.
No, it's not. You still die of it. It's bad.
I would say, though, in that regard, I have noticed, I think a little more recently, like I do think I am more patient and charitable, like when I'm closer to just having gone to confession. And I'm not talking about mortal sin, but as my personality, I guess, comes back, where I get frustrated or angered because of something somebody does to me. Like I think I'm pretty even keel and laid back and easygoing, but people do, I say, wrong me, right? Like do something wrong that impacts me. Whether it's I asked you to do this and you're helping me out and then you screw it up in some way, right? Like things like that happen in my life, and I react. And then I like lose my peace, even if it's just for a little bit. But the more that happens, I think the farther away from God I am. And then it just gets harder and harder and harder.
Yeah.
And then you go back to confession, or at least I think this has happened. And then I'm like recentered and peaced, and I can handle things better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a religious sister would probably go every week, correct?
Probably, yeah.
And I understand there are challenges, like in any ministry, in any part of life, but my sense, though, is it is different if you're living in religious life in your vocation versus living in the world and just dealing with all sorts of things that we have. It's harder, but we know we should go to confession regularly. So
that's true, because we really can't do this without God's grace.
Exactly.
To love as Christ loves.
And Mary, right? Like Mary, I think, is the other person we should cling to here.
I've often wondered how she did that. I mean, she's perfect, right?
Exactly.
And how's she walking around the marketplace, hearing people curse or tell bad jokes or gossip? I mean, how does she
just not engage?
She just walked away. I mean, I don't know.
My mom says often that she thinks my dad's mom like is in heaven, right? We don't know, right? But she's always said about my grandma Betty, because of this peace that she always had in her and this kindness, and just a very virtuous woman. And I don't remember this. Like, I mean, she died when I was 14. I obviously remember my grandmother and like how loving she was and just joy. But I didn't notice that she had that. But my mom would say, like, it didn't matter what the conversation would be in the room. Like, if it ever went to my grandma, she'd just say something like, well, he tries. You know what I mean? Like, she could not engage in any kind of evil, bad, degrading conversation.
Oh, good for her.
So I think of her, and I often think of Mary, but I'm not that way. I suck myself in, and I know too I shouldn't share, the bad qualities of others, like detraction, right? But I do. I mean, you guys know I do a lot, and so things do weigh me down, and then things go wrong, and then I'll vent, and I know I'm not supposed to, but it's like, could you believe this? Like, I just needed this one thing, and it got screwed up, and so I try.
That's one of the
so
things I really wrestle with as a teacher, is because there are times when you have to talk about a student to another teacher, and when does it cross the line into gossip? Because there's a lot of legitimate, like, hey, this kid's struggling in this area and is really, did some really bad stuff in class or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Well, what's the intentionality of why you're saying it?
Honestly, sometimes to vent.
Right?
Yeah,
there
sometimes
you go.
to vent. But
you're supposed to vent to God, right?
Yeah.
Vent to
God.
God.
You're right.
Which seems weird.
Is it?
It does. It just seems weird. But I have tried to start to do that, like in my car, like if I'm annoyed. Like,
well, venting to God is prayer, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It was being raw and honest with Him, and He knows everything anyway.
And
so
He wants to hear that too.
He does.
Yeah, but some people process externally. Maybe it bothers other people. Maybe it's people being difficult. But there's some people that can't. I mean, I guess you could do it to God, but there's like.
It does feel better after
people have to.
right?
Sometimes you just need an ear, and it doesn't even mean anything.
Yeah.
So if I vent,
it's still a sin, though.
It's intentionality, isn't it? Though I don't know. Like,
still a sin if you're just venting to vent.
I process everything internally, so I'm not like the biggest culprit of this. But I know people that they just cannot do anything inside their own head. It has to be
Yeah, I know
done
people like that.
It's done has to be done externally. It has to be done to somebody else externally in order for them to process it.
Speaking of the people that bother me, true extroverts.
Oh, yeah. Well,
I'm like, yo, calm down.
yeah. Yeah. I've gotten better at that because I'm very introverted.
Yeah, you
Like,
are.
very introverted.
Yeah.
Although I'm outgoing introvert.
Yeah, yeah. As am I,
Yeah.
but
Can we talk about one of your frustrations I know?
please.
Traffic, driving.
Yes.
You've mentioned it many times.
Yes, that's my big weakness.
It is, yeah. Although so in Stamford, we're sitting in Stamford right now. Stamford has grown by 15% in the past 10 years or something. We're now
That's a
the
lot.
second largest city in Connecticut.
Second largest now.
It used
Wow.
to be Bridgeport, New Haven, Stamford. Now it's Bridgeport, Stamford, New Haven.
Well, Hartford's up there somewhere.
Sorry, no, Hartford's not.
Hartford's
tiny.
really? Is
Yeah.
Hartford small?
Well, I mean, it's big, but it's small compared to the other cities. In any case,
Interesting.
so we now have like thousands more cars on the road in Stamford than we did like pre-pandemic.
Yeah, and better roads.
And the roads haven't changed.
No.
In fact, they don't grow with the number of cars.
No, they don't, and they should.
And the drivers also come in from not Stamford, not from Fairfield County,
AKA New York.
or
We don't like
Massachusetts,
New York.
or somewhere, and they don't know how to drive.
Just kidding, all you New York listeners.
They don't know how to drive, and it's just and then they have the two people from Massachusetts going the same speed on the Merritt at 60 miles per hour.
No,
driving
you
next to
can't
each
go
other.
60 miles an hour on the Merritt.
No,
it's
70 is the
or
minimum.
50.
You're right. Yeah.
2 lanes, pick one.
Yeah, and so those things really irritate me. So I empathize with that.
See, I'm getting to the point, though, in seeing those slow drivers as that could potentially be my guardian angel protecting me from a crash.
It's true. It's true. I now am so
Yeah.
paranoid. I'm now so paranoid about traffic because it's gotten so bad where I build in so much buffer.
Yeah.
I'm very early at a lot of places now.
It has
because
gotten bad.
it's just
I've
so
learned
bad.
all the back roads between Stanford and Monroe, which is
Not
about
easy.
only 25 miles. But I'll tell you, that's a really windy 25 miles because it's not easy. There's
yeah.
no straight way.
You have to go through Weston?
Because there's 2 giant reservoirs in between here and there, so you have to go around the reservoirs. It's very
Yeah, that's
frustrating.
really hard.
It's challenging, but it's also a very beautiful drive, I will say.
Yeah.
But, so, all right, last question. St. Jose Maria Escrivá, who I really love, he said that don't say, this person annoys me. Say, rather, this person sanctifies me. Have you ever been able to see some difficult people as a gift in your life?
Yeah. I'd say so.
Good.
I know that they are. I know that it's a process of sanctification, but I really struggle. Yeah, I get annoyed. I feel like I have like this patience tolerance that raises and raises and raises, and I'm patient, and then I hit the limit, and then it's done. And oftentimes, if once I'm like over, if it's a really stressful or frustrating thing, I can't typically recover like that day. I'm done. So
Yeah.
it's really hard.
Yeah. For me, I had a friend in seminary who used to say, "Thank you, Jesus, for loving me in this way." Whenever something went wrong in his life, "Thank you, Jesus, for loving me in this way." And I always thought it was a really great response. And I'm starting to say that when I see certain people approaching me, I was like, "Thank you, Jesus, thank you for this opportunity. Help me make the most of it."
Yeah, there's a book, Trustful Surrender to Divine Providence. It's a little
Jean-Claude.
something, not Jean-Claude Van Damme, but
Who's he again?
he's an actor.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Any case, so I forget, it's French authors, but it's an excellent book, and it talks all about that. Like when somebody commits a sin against you, that's a gift to you. It's just their sin, but it's a gift to you, and you have to be thankful for that.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Okay, it's by Claude La Colombière and Jean-Baptiste Saint-Dejour.
Okay, there you go.
Blah, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, I don't remember that because obviously I don't remember it.
Well, that's a great perspective. And St. Augustine says that when it says in the Bible that all things work for good for those who love God, he says all things include sin. Because, and obviously we don't want to intentionally sin, but even our sin is an opportunity for another person to practice patience, kindness, generosity, whatever it is.
And also for us to recognize God's mercy.
Yeah. I mean, how many parents have been on their knees because of a child who's gone wayward?
Oh, Tell me about it.
So
Yeah.
many parents, right? I mean, how many people have prayed for the conversion of sinners? And if there were no sinners, there'd be no one to offer sacrifices for.
And I would say I can recognize in myself that I have a tendency to want to make the person who did the wrong or something or is being difficult like realize they're being difficult or like,
Does that work?
correct them, but like not exactly directly. No, it doesn't work at all. Because a lot of times they can't handle it. Like whatever their difficulty is like something that they're struggling with. And so if you just like shine a light on it, that's going to be terrible
Right.
for them.
Very few people are humble enough to accept correction.
That too.
And I struggle with that, of course. I think everybody does.
See, I allow myself like a period of defense because I need it. So I allow myself, like I give myself patience to be defensive of myself, and then I am able to not be defensive.
Okay, so you have to like process it by being defensive, then you think about it, and then you're like, okay, that was
Yeah,
legitimate
exactly.
criticism.
No, it's actually true. I've had to learn how to do that because otherwise, if I don't, I just lock up.
Yeah, because
And I don't process it.
I think that's our natural reaction is to not
So I've
listen to it.
I've learned that I can give myself a small period of defensiveness, and then it's enough that gets me over. It's like the catalyst for then actually processing.
Yeah,
Being open, maybe.
Yeah, being open.
Some truth in what was said.
Sure.
But it's hard.
Yeah, and I want to get to the point where I can thank God and thank them for
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah.
the prayer that you said, I mean, those moments that we could have just between us and Jesus, I think are pretty precious. So if you look at it that way, like, this person's really annoying me, but I'm going to do my best to not let them know. And
Yeah.
this is for you, Jesus. Like,
Yeah. And
that can
as
help
Saint
us
Therese
grow.
once said, she was bathed in perspiration, trying to withhold her anger and frustration. God bless her, but she did such a successful job that she's a saint. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Restless. Just remember that sometimes we probably annoy Jesus. No, I'm just kidding. Our Lord's love for us is absolutely unconditional, and He calls us to love our neighbor in the same way, even the ones that are challenging, because they are the ones who can make us the greatest saints. Tune in to our next episode of Restless coming up next Friday, and it's on Veritas Catholic Network, 1350 AM and 103.9 FM, and wherever you get your podcasts. Tune in next time.
Hey everybody, this is producer Matt. If you liked this week's episode of Restless and want to help the show grow, please rate us, review us, and subscribe on your preferred platform. God bless.